Good evening, this is the December 4th, 2025 Town of Lapel Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Roll call, please.
Dan Plumley.
Here.
Tim Monroe.
Here.
Cam Paddock.
Here.
Andrea Baldwin.
Here.
I'll make my maiden name.
We have no old business. The only new business we have is BZA 2025-07, the variance of use. The location is 4540 South, 800 West, Lapel, Indiana 46051. Applicant name is Jacob Bratton, attorney for Tristan Maggart. The variance is UDO variance 2.1.2, approval of a variance of use in the agricultural zoning district to permit the parking of commercial vehicles as a home occupation on a residential property. Marcellus, do you want to present your staff report, please?
Sure. So to go over the proposal, the proposed use in a little bit more depth, Maggart Trucking, the company in question here, has a fleet of dump trucks that they use to haul aggregate. And the property right now is acting as a sort of depot for those trucks. The truck drivers arrive in the morning, pick up the trucks, do their jobs. The trucks return to the parcel empty of all their material and are parked there overnight for the drivers to come get the next day. Currently, the UDO does not allow such a business in the agricultural district as an accessory use. And that is the reason for their request for a variance. This is the first variance of use case we've had under the current ordinance, so you'll have to bear with me. It will be a little bit of a lengthy staff report. To start with, conducted an analysis of the zoning and land use history of the property. So the property was annexed in 2014, and under that annexation ordinance, the property, all the territory that was annexed to the town in that under that ordinance shall retain its current zoning classifications and designations as established by Madison County until such time as the town updates its comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, or zoning map. Then a year later, in 2015, the current Lapel UDO was adopted, including the current zoning map, which zoned the property agricultural. So at that time, any sort of zoning that had been established in the county had been reset to Lapel's zoning. The county assessor records indicate that in or around 2016, there was a minor subdivision approved that split an approximately 9.5 acre lot from a larger parent lot. And then that property contained a house, 3 barns, and a grain bin. And this sort of establishes on the history of an agricultural use and a single family residential use on the property. In 2022, that subdivision was replatted, and that original 9.5 acre lot that was split off was subdivided again and split essentially in 2. And one of the 2 daughter properties in that replat is the subject property that we're here to talk about tonight. There's no record of any rezoning happening at this time, and all the buildings that existed on the property prior to the subdivision were retained on the other daughter parcel, not on the subject property. So at the time of the subdivision, there was no buildings on the subject property. The 3-plat drawing and the site plan that was submitted as part of this subdivision replat showed the plan, the proposed development for the subject property, which was a house with a berm located behind it. And then beyond the berm, it showed a beyond the berm, it showed a sort of just a flat, sort of empty area. There's no indication of what that area beyond the berm would be used for. Subsequent permit applications on the property made no mention of any use aside from the residence that was built on the property. We have records in town hall of a permit application for a pool, for a fence, but nothing for any sort of additional uses or, and then the most recent permit application was for a barn that was approved earlier this year. And that brings us to the analysis of the legal status of the current use. So for a little background, the land use of a specific property can be classified as either legal or illegal and conforming or non-conforming. A legal use is one that has received a permit or certificate of occupancy authorizing the property for that use, whereas an illegal use has not received any such authorization. Conforming uses meet the use and development standards of the zoning district in which they are located, while non-conforming uses do not. Legal nonconformity occurs when a use is, when there is an amendment to the zoning map or the zoning text that causes a previously authorized, so a legal use, to no longer meet the standards of that zoning district. And legal nonconforming uses are typically protected and are protected under the Lapel UDO. However, because there is no permit authorizing this use, this is not a legal non-conforming use, this is an illegal use. This is the reason why they were issued a code citation, and the use variance being sought tonight is to resolve that code enforcement situation. The need for variance of use. One of the primary purposes of zoning is to control the location of uses to avoid a situation where a use is incompatible with surrounding uses or the character of the zoning district it's located in, and therefore becomes a nuisance. One of the factors to use compatibility that is most important here is what in planning we call intensity. And intensity kind of basically just describes how heavily the property is being developed or used. The more lot coverage, the bigger the building, the more noise, the more light, the more pollution of a use generates, the more intense it's considered to be. So apartments are more intense than a single family house. Factory is more intense than shops. Shops are more intense than a home. The agricultural zoning district is the lowest intensity zoning district in the town of Lapel, and it is intended to provide locations for agricultural operations and related uses, reduce conflicts between residential and agricultural uses, preserve the viability of agricultural operations, limit development in areas with minimal infrastructure, and to protect agricultural operations from land uses that are incompatible with the available infrastructure. The hauling of construction materials and/or the parking and storage of vehicles used for that purpose are not really land uses related to agricultural operations. However, they are substantially, this requested use is substantially similar in intensity to some uses that are allowed in this zoning district, namely agricultural product terminal and agricultural product sales, distribution, and storage facility, both of which staff found to be substantially similar to the proposed use here because of their reliance on, or the expectation that there will be lots of vehicle traffic involved in both of those uses. With an agricultural product terminal or an agricultural product sales, distribution, and storage facility, we would expect to see lots of trucks arriving on site, loading and unloading, perhaps even the storage of material, both indoor and outdoor. And so that kind of is similar to the proposed use here. It could also be considered as related to the use mineral extraction and processing, which is a special use in the agricultural district, meaning it would require a special use permit in order to develop a property for that use. But again, because this business hauls aggregate, there is a connection there between that mineral extraction and processing use that is currently allowed in the district. So the uses of similar intensity I just described establish a basis for allowing the use of a property in the agricultural district for the purpose of parking heavy vehicles between hauling jobs. However, because the property also has a residence, the operation of this business on the property is considered a home occupation and therefore must conform to Volume 2, Section 2, Subsection 15, Home Occupation Standards. Staff then took a look at the home occupation standards in that section, and you see in the staff report written a table there that shows each of the standards for type 1 and type 2 home occupations. The difference between a type 1 and a type 2 is again, that idea of intensity. Type 2 home occupations are a little bit more intense. They'll have a more prominent physical footprint, whereas type 1 home occupation is something that most likely, if you were to drive by on the street or walk by on the street, you wouldn't know that that home occupation is occurring at that property. In the table, the standards that are not being met by the proposed use are highlighted in red. You can see that, I can call a couple, or I'll call them out. Home occupations must not involve the employment of any more than one person who does not reside at the location of the home occupation. The home occupation must not require any exterior storage or display of equipment or materials, including vehicles, operable or inoperable equipment or appliances being serviced by the home occupation. Not more than 40% of the total floor area of any level of the primary structure shall be used for the home occupation. However, business practices and accessory structures are permitted so long as the accessory structures do not alter the residential character of the property or the neighborhood. The issue there is that you can very clearly see the driveway, you can see the trucks, and you can see the berm. All of these represent physical signs of the home occupation on the property. The home occupation must not require that more than 2 additional parking spaces be added to the lot on which the residence is located. The home occupation must not require the use of commercial vehicles for pickup and deliveries other than from the U.S. Postal Service, UPS, and other express couriers. The establishment and conduct of a home occupation shall not change the principal residential character or use of the dwelling unit, nor shall there be any exterior evidence of the home occupation being conducted other than the attached sign as specified in subsection 8 of this code. And the home occupation use shall be clearly incidental to the residential use. It's because of these failures to meet the home occupation standards that this variance of use is required. If the property could be brought into conformance with all of these standards, then the appropriate route would be to get a special use permit to allow that type 2 home occupation. Now, the next thing to discuss is the quote unquote peculiar conditions. One of the required findings for a variance of use is that the need for the variance arises from some condition that is peculiar to the property. Indiana code does not define, the Indiana code doesn't, or at least I didn't find a definition of what they mean by peculiar. But it is generally understood to mean that the condition is a unique characteristic of the subject property and not a condition that exists more generally within the zoning district or the town at large, and that it is it's also generally understood that this is not a condition that is the result of the action or inaction of the property owners. You know, this is like something like having a stream running through your property, or you know, having a big change in elevation on your property, stuff like that. That is, you know, a sort of natural condition. The petitioner attests that the condition peculiar to the property is that it was designed to support the contested use, and that use is the most productive use of the property. But as I just mentioned, peculiar conditions do not typically include design choices made by the current or previous property owners. Variances are intended to provide relief when the ordinance's restrictions deny any and all reasonable use of the property, not necessarily to allow the most profitable or the most convenient solutions. In thinking about, so we, you know, staff looked beyond the reasoning provided in the application for any other peculiar conditions. That investigation led to a consideration of the alternative solutions to getting a variance of use. So variance of use is needed because the trucking operations currently do not meet the standards of a home occupation, and therefore cannot otherwise exist on the same parcel as a residence. The alternative remedy would be to subdivide the property so that the 2 uses are separated. What that would look like is you would apply for a major subdivision. This is because the property is itself the daughter of a minor subdivision, and therefore it can't be handled in that same process. So the subject property, in order for that to work, this new subdivided property would need to meet all the lot standards in that district. And looking at that, that would require a waiver from the lot width and lot frontage requirements, because splitting the lot straight up the middle would result in 2 lots that are not wide enough according to the zoning standards. In addition to the subdivision permit, or in addition to that subdivision, the property owner would likely need to apply for additional permits from the county and from county and state agencies, such as the Madison County Drainage Board or the Indiana Department of Transportation. And the proposed subdivision may result in properties that do not meet their minimum requirements, and there's no, you know, waiver process for that. If you can't, you know, if your property is not big enough for drainage board standards, or, you know, for a septic tank, for example, you know, tough luck, you can't develop it with a septic tank, or just as an example. Then the proposed subdivision would need to be approved by the Plan Commission. If approved, the subdivision may generate the need for variances from development standards, likely in relation to setback and buffer yard standards. And in addition to all of this, the applicant may also want to seek a classification of use decision from either the planning administrator or the Board of Zoning Appeals to basically ensure that the use that they are proposing is allowed. And as a result of the many steps in the process described above, the need to go through this alternative process may be viewed by members of the BZA as a condition that creates a unique burden on the property. This view must be balanced, however, with the view that the burden is to an extent self-created. Some of these issues could have been addressed when the property was initially split off from its parent parcel. And the property owner should have ensured that the business use of the property was in conformity with standards in the ordinance before designing the property in support of that use. Next, we examine consistency with the intent of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan. So the intent of use restrictions, once again, is to control the location of uses that may become nuisances, and to create processes that allow authorities to require project sites to be developed in particular ways to mitigate potential nuisance. The contested use, does not have any significant impact on the character of the surrounding area. There are other residential, agricultural, and/or industrial sites throughout the agricultural district and in the specific neighborhood of the subject property that are developed in similar ways. For example, there's a grain silo operation just up 800 from there. So another similarly sort of industrial use, or it's agricultural related, but another sort of, lots of trucks kind of use. The subject property generally provides better screening than other properties, even where that screening is incomplete or not yet mature. I've noticed that there's a berm out front, and the plans show there's a berm. I don't know if there are, I don't recall seeing if there are any trees on that berm or any sort of landscaping on that berm, or if there is, if it's not yet at its sort of mature final state. But there is an attempt to screen the property from the road that should be noted here. The main nuisance concern seems to be the wear that the trucking operation puts on South 800 West and adjoining streets. The section of the road that this property is located on is in pretty bad shape. I just drove on it today, and lots of potholes. The shoulders are kind of crumbling, and there's no way to know that. No way for me to ascertain whether all of that is the result of this particular use. As I said, there are other sort of heavy trucking uses on this road. I would note, however, that when I did take a drive over there, I did notice that there is if you come off of 13 to get on 400, to get over to that street to 800, you'll see that there is a sign that says no trucks over 5 tons. But there's not a similar sign at the other end where it meets old 132. So I'm not sure how far that zone kind of extends, and I'm not sure if it extends onto 800 as well. But I did want to make sure that got noted. It wasn't in the staff report, so so it appears that the road was not designed to handle necessarily all these trucks, and that is a concern for residents who have to use that street. It's a concern for the town as well, who's responsible for maintaining that road. While it's entirely likely that the trucking operation carried out on the subject property contributes to road damage, it is not the only one contributing to the damage on the road. And it's hard to say how much their contribution really is. A variance of use would allow the property to remain agricultural rather than having to be rezoned in any sort of way, which would keep it consistent with the future land use designation for the property identified in the comprehensive plan. Finally, I get to the variance of use findings. So, according to Indiana Code, in order to approve a variance of use, the BZA needs to find that the following 5 criteria are met. The applicant proposed fair findings in their submittal, and these are staff's findings. Finding number 1, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Approval of the requested use will allow a use that has been in operation since 2022 without any documented complaints from nearby permitted uses. Similar uses with similar impacts, particularly on road conditions, are allowed to operate in the district. And so it would be a little difficult to disallow this use on those grounds. The use and value of the area subject to the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. It is likely that the use and value of real estate adjacent to the subject site will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner by allowing the requested variance. Again, it's been in use since 2022, but if there are any property owners here tonight that want to challenge that finding, staff certainly welcomes it. The need for the requested variance does not arise from some peculiar condition related to the property. The need for the requested variance arises from decisions made by the property owner in the process of developing the property. The property should have been replatted differently with this use in mind, or a special use permit for a type 2 home occupation should have been sought at the time of permitting. The strict application of the terms of this ordinance will result in a practical difficulty if applied to the property. The home occupation standards were designed and intended for homes built in close proximity to one another, where the unrestricted operation of home businesses could alter the character of the neighborhood and introduce nuisances such as a lack of adequate parking, loud noises, or noxious odors. Their strict application in an agricultural area where the nearest residential neighbor, aside from the sister property that the subject property was split off of, is quarter of a mile or an eighth of a mile away, and in which other residential properties are developed in similar ways, if not for similar purposes, would restrict the development of the property to a level far below what it could support. The approval does not interfere substantially with the Lapel comprehensive plan. The future land use map reserves this part of Lapel for agricultural zoning and uses. Approval of a variance of use eliminates the necessity of rezoning the property, which would introduce the possibility of future owners developing the property in ways that are inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. By avoiding the rezoning process, we avoid that possibility. And as this use is similar in character and intensity to uses allowed in the agricultural district, it does not substantially interfere with the intention of the district or its future land use designation. Given these findings, actually, before I get to that, I think the day of or the day after I published this staff report, staff did receive a letter from the public on this case. This letter is from a Diane Gwynn Schaff of Schaff Family Enterprises. She writes, "We would like to go on record as strongly opposed to Mr. Bratton's application for Mr. Tristan Maggart's appeal for a variance to the current EBO, which does not allow such operations as he is proposing. Lapel has zoning for a good reason. His proposal damages property values. Our family has been owners of our property for 90 years, and we will be negatively impacted by his proposed variance. This is an agricultural area. not an industrial truck parking and repair site. He needs to locate his business to an industrial site. Mr. Maggart needs to accommodate the Lapel UDO, not vice versa. There is an issue of soil contamination from solvents, oil, and other industrial contaminants and toxins associated with truck maintenance. In addition, trucks can deteriorate, get old, and accumulate, and become difficult to move, leaving an undesirable area. We will have an eyesore in our neighborhood. Again, we hope the Lapel Board of Zoning Appeals will keep the current UDO in place and not allow this variance. So in light of the findings discussed above and the letter I just read, staff's recommendation still is to approve, to approve the variance of use. However, staff recommends the following specific conditions. Of course, there's the two sort of standard ones that we always have, but the specific ones for this property, the approval shall be subject to Lapel UDO Volume 1, Section 6, Subsection 12, Special Use and Variance Execution and Termination. That section just kind of speaks to what the process is for terminating a special use and when that special use would end, under what conditions it would end. And then in addition, the approved use shall comply with the following terms adapted from Lapel UDO Volume 1, Section 5, Subsection 6, non-conforming uses of structures, land, or structures and land in combination. A, no structure shall be constructed in connection with the approved use unless it is to decrease the non-conformity of the approved use. If no structural alterations are made, the approved use may be changed to another non-conforming use with the approval of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The board shall find that the proposed use is equally or more appropriate to the district in which it is located than the existing use. The board shall consider the development standards applicable to the proposed use established by this section and make reasonable conditions as part of any approval. C, the approved use of land shall not be enlarged, increased, extended to occupy a greater area of land, or moved in whole or in part to any other portion of the lot than was occupied at the effective date of this approval. If the approved use is intentionally discontinued for 1 year or longer, any subsequent use of such land, structure, or land and structure in combination shall conform to the provisions of this ordinance. Uses which are required to be discontinued due to government action which impedes access to the premises, or damage resulting from fire, flood, or other natural disaster, or a criminal act shall be exempt from this provision. Such exempt uses, if rebuilt or restored, shall be identical in scale, lot coverage, and all other aspects to that which was discontinued. And if the approved use is superseded by a permitted use, it shall thereafter conform to the regulations of the district in which it is located, and the legal non-conforming use shall thereafter not be resumed. And you'll see the motion options listed there at the end. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Marcel. Get back up there. Jacob Bratton.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to make any additional presentation or comments concerning what was already presented?
Yeah, sure. Good evening. I'm Jacob Bratton from McNeely Law. We're here on behalf of Mr. Maggart. Whole family's here to support tonight. So this is a family business. I appreciate all of your help. Marcellus has done a great job working us through this. I know it's been kind of a process to get a use variance and get our application in. So we do appreciate your hard work and very detailed report here that I know that does not always get recognition, but there's a lot that goes into this, and very thoughtful consideration. You appreciate that. Just to add a couple points, a little bit of color. First of all, we are good with all of the recommended conditions. We've discussed that. All those are perfectly normal. We expected some conditions, and we think those are more than reasonable, and we are happy to comply with those. Just to add a little bit of additional color, this is an old family parcel. So this is we're just in third generation here now. There was a historic commercial use at this property that I think that was your grandfather that used it as a commercial use. So we had, again, not an excuse, but we had operated under that the variance was for commercial uses at this property. And when this process came up, that was the first indicator that, this is not, we're not permitted to do all commercial uses. It was for a very specific one back in, I don't know, Marcellus, do you remember the 70s or 80s? It was granted. We didn't have records of that. So you guys found them somewhere. So good for y'all, but we did not have records. We just had always heard that there was a commercial approved use. So that is the historic background to this. I think we are appropriate here because one of our issues is what exactly we're hauling. If we were here to haul corn or soybeans, this would not really be an issue. It's just that we're hauling aggregates. I think what makes this a little bit of an appropriate use is we're not actually using this as a spot to load, right? We don't have big piles of rock or mulch or debris back there that we're loading and causing all kinds of noise. Really, it's just, the trucks warm up in the morning and they're out of there. Typically, almost all of the time, unless there's a little bit left over from the night before, typically they are empty. So the wear and tear on the road is much less of these than they would be full going through a grain bin or anything like that. So it's typically empty trucks, leave in the morning, do what they're supposed to do, haul aggregate, dump it, anything, and then they come back at night and are parked, and that's all there is to it. There is an attempt to screen, as Marcellus pointed out. These trucks are all parked in the back corner of the property behind the house and then the barn, and then there's a berm. The trucks are all parked back there in the back corner of that, until we just heard that staff received a letter. That's the first we've heard of anybody having issues with any of these operations or any complaints. It's been going on for years, and like I said, we did not know that this was against the zoning code, and as soon as we figured that out with these things, we've been working with staff and with you guys to try to come up with an acceptable remedy, and we think that this is a good use for a good business to be in this community. We want to be able to keep the family here that's been here for generations. We want them to be able to operate and be good members of this community. And if you have any other questions, we're happy to answer those or offer any additional color we need to.
All right, thank you. At this time, I would open up for any individuals from the community that would want to demonstrate for or against this variance. There's no one speaking for or against it. Questions from BZA members to Marcellus' staff or to Mr. Bratton?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question
Yes, you may.
for Jacob? It was 1990. Some of us were still in high school then. So. One of the things that comes up in my review of the cases that I just in my review of it, obviously these folks get to vote and I don't, but is the element with regard to unnecessary hardship. Is there, it may have been discussed, I think Marcellus hit on it some, but that standard is a tough one. That requires that particular parcel cannot be used for anything that's a legal use, a permitted use. And if it can, then this town's restriction would be upheld. Can you provide the board with to address that concern, that particular element, because I think that was your toughest one.
And I agree that is a tough one. I think the real problem here is that the UDO, and I understand it's going through some changes, and that's why we're here tonight doing this use variance. We really can't operate this anywhere in the town of Lapel, right? I mean, there's no particular use that would allow this. On industrial anything, right? There's no use that really fits into this. So I get that, but under the entire UDO, we are restricted from operating this type of business, period, right? And other businesses that would be restricted, there's no mention of any type of construction businesses. There's no, those type of businesses, and I think historically, when we look back at some of the approvals, it was, what are they the closest to, and can we approve something, they're kind of like this use, can we approve that? And from my point of view, that's a little bit arbitrary to try to put them in with other types of uses that they may be close to. And this was our attempt to get it exactly what we're gonna do, tell you guys up front, here's what we wanna do, here's how we wanna do it. Do you guys approve us doing it this way or not? And that's our, rather than try to separate it and rezone it as industrial and try to fit it in as a truck terminal, we thought this was the easiest way to do it was this is our use, this is where we wanna do it, we're happy with staff imposed conditions, and, it keeps it agricultural. If we ever move or stop operating, no one else can come do this without your guys' approval. We don't have an island out there of industrial or commercial zoning. And ultimately, you guys have the power to, tonight to control it and limit us with what's in the report and what we're agreeing to tonight.
And not to put words in your mouth, but it's your position that the unnecessary hardship is the fact that you can't do it anywhere else, that the unnecessary hardship is not such that we can't, my understanding of unnecessary hardship is I can't do anything else with this property. For instance, the approved use of the county in 1990 was signed by Mr. Maggart. Neil? Are you Neil?
My father.
Okay, all right, very grandfather. Is he still here, around?
No, he's been gone for about 20 years now.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was talked about at that time, it was a welding shop, farm equipment repair, grain bins, spraying equipment, things of that nature. Jacob, you and your client can address this. Is that no longer possible on the property?
That building or that business is no longer there.
But that type of purpose, if you wanted to, could you?
I would assume we'd have to come here and get that variance approved. Honestly, like any kind of commercial stuff in that, with the way the UDO reads now, and I get that that's a historic, but I would argue that was for him, right? So I don't think we could do that now, if that's your question, because if it was a variance and it stopped, I don't think we can do that. So, and there's been continuous commercial operations at the property. But that particular, that again, we just learned that at that through the process, Tristan didn't, his grandfather's been gone almost 20 years now. We didn't have that information to pass down, and to know that it's always just, yeah, we're allowed, we got a variance to operate a business here. So, and, I sometimes, I think 1990, and that doesn't seem like that long ago, right? But details get lost in 30 years, 35 years.
Understood.
So again, but to a direct answer to your question, I don't think we could do that because that use stopped. And we would have to come in front of you guys and ask for that again. Because I don't think that use wasn't even occurring at the time that it was annexed in, so it wouldn't be a, non-conforming use at that time.
And how long is this particular, Marcellus, you may have mentioned this in your staff report, I think you said 3 years, 2 years, the complaint about the cited use, the trucking of implements, how long has that been going on?
So, as far as I can tell, like the subject property came into existence in 2022. That's when the subdivision passed that created this specific property at this specific address. If there was operations happening before that, I'm not aware of that, but as far as I can tell, since 2022, this use has been ongoing at this property.
One of the things that can be a substantial hardship is if there's evidence that this type of activity has been going on for a long period of time. There's a case in which there was a fireworks shop, I think it was in Boone County, that had been there for 20 years, and it was a situation where it clearly wasn't allowed, but there was testimony and evidence on the record that to make somebody move a business after that long a period of time is an unnecessary hardship. Would that qualify for you guys?
Well, Mr. Maggart, Tristan's father, started hauling and operating trucks out of these properties in 2003.
Okay, well, that's over 20 years.
Yeah, so it's over 20 years, and again, being totally transparent, was operating before the parcel was split, driving his own trucks out of that property for many years before that. So yes, it's always, again, and that was under the assumption that we can operate commercial stuff out of this, and this is our first time since 2000, over 20 years without a complaint or, nay, anything until this action.
So there was trucking that went on that would be a violation of this, but if it's going on over 20 years, is that
In the
what the
same,
record
the
just
same kind of trucking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the same hauling of aggregates, all that before.
If the board wants to make a finding that there is a substantial hardship, I think that should be added. And the reason I break this up is that, this has been a fairly high profile thing. These guys have done everything right. They caught a mistake we had in our code, thanks to me. And, but there has been some eyeballs on this, and you don't have to go very far to find lawsuits against BZAs throughout the state. And they're not particularly cheap, and for the towns or for the petitioners. And so you want as many things, if you want to find in their favor, you want to make sure all 5 elements, the findings are as meaty as possible. You only have to win on one, so you might as well put as many in there as you can. But that is what you guys consider to be substantial in all those situations. And I think Marcellus mentioned it. They don't win if they bat 800. If they go 4 for 5, they lose. They have to hit all 5.
Understood.
And we appreciate that, and I did not mean to seem contentious about.
No, I was genuinely curious.
Yeah,
because
no.
Thanks for those questions, Jeff. Any other questions from the staff on any of this?
No, I was just gonna make a comment, towards the letter. I appreciate someone writing in, but I also know Maggers has been in the community for many years.
I don't know that it really matters, the people that wrote that letter in, they live in North Carolina. So they just own land right there.
That's good to know also, so thank you for that.
And there's
Yes,
2 other property owners surrounding that, and they're not here and they don't
Yes.
write anything.
That's
How
good
many
to know.
trucks
What's on
do you
the
currently
north side?
operate out of?
Do what?
How many, what's the number of trucks?
15.
15? And they're all semi, tractor trailer?
Dump trucks.
Marcellus, this would be a question for you.
Yeah.
So, I think it was section C,
Right.
you're finding that lab, the special conditions, talk about enlargement, increasing or extending the area. Would that also come into play if we wanted to add a truck or 5 trucks? Do we put that in there that if we decide to approve it, that it's based on the current number of trucks and that cannot grow?
We could definitely add that, I think.
I mean, I don't know if I just
I mean,
through asking, I guess, not saying we have to put that in there, but that would be, I mean, businesses are always wanting to grow. They've been around a while. Sounds like, building out there, you're going in that direction. But, the lot only holds so much, but it probably could hold a few more trucks. But do we limit that, to keep the current traffic where it is?
Or do you look at it and know, what does it hold right? What could it hold in the future? I mean, you can't stop the business from growing as well.
And in
My
the
eyes.
past, when I've been involved with these, we have limited the area where it's parked, right? So
Right.
we can do a boundary, like, draw the line at the barn to the back of the property, and like, as long as they're back there in that general area, right? So then it's us to play Tetris to figure out how to fit them in there if we want to add extras. But at least, and that's usually based on some sort of screening criteria or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think
have
it needs
the
to be
berm.
established what comfortable, which that's up for debate. The word-
yeah, we don't want 100
what
trucks out
fits
there
in there.
parking on the
You
front
don't
yard.
want trucks in the front yard and, all around that everywhere. I mean, if you don't put it in there, then he could say, well, it doesn't say how many trucks they got.
yeah, I mean, and I think, what Jacob was mentioning there with having a sort of an area that we're limited to, I think is the approach that condition 4C is taking there. Like, that use can't be enlarged or increased or extended to occupy a greater area of land than the one it already occupies. And so whatever portion of the property is currently being used to park the trucks, that area is as big as you can go. I think
Right, I think it needs to be defined. I mean, obviously, this, what we have, the GIS and Google Earth, everything I've looked at, nothing shows the new building. So it's not updated on there. But, I mean, that's taking up some ground, the park. I think it needs to be established with a drawing, what is realistic truck parking and where everything's accessible and it makes sense.
And I think we would, right off the bat, agree to only park from the back of the barn to the back of the like
Right.
nothing will be parked in
Sure.
front of the rear edge of the barn unless it's,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't
unless we got to,
Trying to hinder them from growing, but I just,
Yeah.
you know, want us to be covered here and
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And I also, like, again, I want to be clear and upfront. I don't want it to say nothing. I'd say for overnight or long-term parking, like, I don't want to, you know, if a guy parks in the driveway for a second to go back and run and grab something from his
Right,
truck,
yeah.
I don't want you guys fielding complaints all the time, but also, you know, you're right, we shouldn't be parking these in the front yard or in the regular driveway. So I think it would be eminently reasonable to say, no, you know, no trucks will be parked long-term in front of the rear edge of the barn on the property, if you guys are comfortable with that restriction.
You work year round, don't you? No, Corey.
From the, or basically what I printed off of the GIS, it does not currently show where your, I believe it's the newest building is at.
Yeah.
Would you be able to, I know it shows it on, but is it hand drawn on there?
It's in their permit application, it shows
Yeah.
a schematic.
Okay.
That's what it shows when you
That's
weren't
what
sure if
it's
there was trees. There are starting to be. You can see those on the blueprint.
74 by 52.
52.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So it's actually taking out part of the berm.
So it looks like we got about
Starts,
190 feet by
I think,
220 feet behind the barn of property.
did you take out part of the berm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It takes off the berm and goes east. 70 feet. Property line.
Almost rid of that one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty good size.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good.
Okay. I just wanted to get a better idea. That, having that on that. And then, the operations then would just be
Yeah.
solely what's on your property of the two. You wouldn't be using the other property to drive trucks in and out on. I know there's the parking lot looks like it's connected back in there,
Yeah, I
but.
mean, it's all kind of one, but I just use my land for my.
Right. Okay. Right.
When you guys leave, come and go, is it always coming out and going south to
So
38?
we'll go south to 500 there,
Over 13?
go over 13.
Any other questions? Any board members?
I have one more.
Hmm?
I don't know if you should go answer, but then, when you filed your permit for the new barn earlier this year, you indicated on the permit that it's residential use, it's not commercial. Was that a mistake?
No,
Is that what you were told,
no, I don't use my barn
Yeah.
for trucking at
the
all.
new barn, that new big barn is nothing associated with the truck?
It's really not.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks like it, so that's why I asked.
So basically, all you're really using this for is a parking lot. Yeah.
I guess I follow up to that, then the barn that separates the two houses, is that your shop? I mean, do you have a shop on site at all?
No.
You don't work
So
on
the
site?
barn that is between my lane and my dad's lane, that's my dad's.
Okay,
There's an offset in the property line there.
yeah, right. I just don't want to touch
Yeah.
the property. So there's no
And just to
shop.
clarify, he doesn't work on trucks at the property.
Okay, it's just strictly parking.
Yeah.
In and out.
Any other questions? Questions at all?
Nope.
All right, with that, I would, open for a motion, or Motion possibilities are either to accept with no conditions, accept with conditions, to reject the variance, or to continue this to the next meeting of the BZA. Do I have a motion for this variance?
I motion to approve the variance use in the agricultural zoning district to permit the parking of commercial vehicles as a home occupation on a residential property as submitted application BZA 2025-07, based upon the findings of fact and or presented by staff and with specific condition proposed by staff.
Okay, Dan has made a motion to approve with
I
conditions.
second.
Andrea, second. Roll call, please.
Dan Plumley,
Yes.
Tim Monroe,
Yes.
Cam Paddock,
Yes.
Andrea Baldwin.
Yes.
And passed unanimously.
And just as a super clarification, the restriction on parking is just behind the barn, correct?
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you, guys.
All right. So I think we have, get back to the, there's no other business at this time, no announcements, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
But I'm lucky, young lady, this way for you.
Yeah, that building's there. Yeah.